All right. Okay. Well, welcome back to another episode of the Retro Bros. How you doing, man? Good.
Yeah, and this is a bit of a special episode. This
A
one.
bit of a special episode, actually. Yeah, because we've got another retro bro, the most retro bro, the older bro, Steve.
Hi, long-time fan.
It's funny actually because we've mentioned Steve being an older retro bro in like so many episodes over the last couple of years.
This is a Mario that was bought for me by my brother Steve, the older brother. My brother Steve got it for me, and that one's going to Steve, one of the other retro bros. The oldest retro bro, Steve, still has what it takes.
But I don't think you've ever actually been in an episode other than in like cutaways here and there. I'm glad we can finally do this.
Well, it's an honour. I believe actually I was in the last podcast holding a camera.
Yeah, you were. You were.
Yeah, I know, because my kids always squeal with excitement when they see a little flash of me on the
It's funny because straight after we had a conversation, you were like, man, you've got to get me on the next one because you've been saying things and they're not right and I've got to correct you.
Well, I don't know.
But do you know what, though? It's funny because there is actually another episode of the Retro Bros that Steve is in that's not out yet, and that's the Japan episode. It's just like Chris was in one of the episodes as well, down in, I can't even remember where it was, like the caravan, like
Oh, yeah, of course.
Type 40 Toys.
If I remember correctly, I will be in the Japan episode, beating one of you at Street Fighter.
That would be me. Let's get on to what we're going to talk about today, because like last episode was great. It was really good to like relive some of those moments and talk about some of those games that we used to play. But one of the things we just didn't touch on, which now I think about it is like crazy, because I spent so much of my time playing, and that's handheld games, like the handheld games that shaped us.
It's because like I think I said in the last one that the first console that was ever bought for me was the Xbox, and the first console I ever bought for myself was the Dreamcast. And actually, I got that wrong. The first console that was ever bought for me was the Game Boy Pocket, the yellow one that I had, and actually Steve bought me that. So that was one of the things he called me up on. So then I said that to you, and you were like, mate, we should do handhelds. We should speak about handhelds because there's so much to talk about.
It was actually Chris who was the first one in our family to get handheld. I think he had the original Game Boy.
Ah, okay. So I thought that was your Game Boy because there's a picture of you holding a Game Boy, and I just assumed it was yours.
No, I always wanted a Game Boy, original Game Boy. I always wanted one. I had the NES, but I managed to wangle it so that Chris got it for, well, his birthday is really near to Christmas, so I can't remember which one it was for, but I do definitely remember getting him Zelda and Kirby for the same, so it must have been he got it for Christmas, and then for the same birthday, a month later, he got those two heavy hitters.
I remember as well because it was Link's Awakening, isn't it? It's like the Wind Egg, because that's like Chris's favorite Zelda of like all time. So when it was re-released recently, he was like, "That looks so amazing!" And for me, like I'm a huge Zelda fan, but that one isn't as poignant for me because probably again it's a little bit before my time.
There was a kid who lived really near to me when I must have been about 8 or something, and he had the Game Boy when it was new, and I used to just go around and watch him play, sometimes have a go. Okay, to be honest, he wasn't really a friend. He was just a kid I knew who lived in the neighbourhood, and I remember once his mum asking me, like, are you not just coming around to play games, are you? You are like actually friends with my son. I remember he was a year or two younger. And I was like, no, yeah, I am. Like, no way, man. Like, he was a nice guy, I'm sure. He had like 9 games. Like, who had 9 games? But then one of my good friends, my real good friends, he got one with Super Mario Land. And then I would even like have sleepovers at his house and I would be playing Mario Land. And so I've got that Mario Land music like etched into my mind forever. And I remember thinking this is like a little bit like hard at first because Mario is so small. But then it went to the levels where you fly a plane and you're in like a submarine. There's like a shoot 'em up, and I was like, this is amazing. Like I've never played this. It's like it's not just like Super Mario Brothers like shoehorned onto the small screen. This is like a totally different game. The one I saw at this other kid's house, who was like a game friend, was Gradius. I remember watching him play Gradius, and I remember thinking, well, this it is quite hard to see, but this is pretty good. right?
Yeah.
And then obviously if we flash forward and when our brother Chris got one, Tetris, like, it was the game that everyone can play and still plays, you know, obviously, like,
Yeah, Tetris is great. Yeah, absolutely. You're big on Tetris now, are you not?
Yeah, I mean, with the resurgence of it, it's like 35 years old or something, so they released a couple of Tetris games like Tetris Effect, which I've played a lot, and of course Tetris 99, which anyone could play on the Switch, right? They have it online.
Again, harking back to the fact that, like, handheld, like the roots where it came from, Tetris.
But still just games that are priceless and that you can play on any console that are really fun.
Yeah, definitely. Like, it didn't matter. It was just a one screen puzzle game, right? And I played it. I think Mum played it. Even our grandma played it. Everyone played Tetris. That was the beauty of it as well. So it made games through handheld systems into this kind of like more acceptable thing.
As soon as you mentioned Super Mario Land, I was like, I think I played Wario Land more than...
Oh my God, yeah, Wario Land. Correct me if I'm wrong, isn't Wario Land like Super Mario Land 3 Wario Land?
Yeah. You got Super Mario Land, then you had Super Mario Land 2, the 6 golden coins, which had the like upgraded sprite, you know, a little bit more like the Super Nintendo sprite. For a Game Boy game, it looked good, but it was a kind of different experience, you know. It's a different type of game. And then obviously number 3, they turned it on its head, and it's Wario.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the games that, like, in my memory, would be Zelda and Kirby. So that first Zelda, like, I think quite a lot of people have got good memories of that. And Kirby as well, because it's pretty easy. And it was like one of the, you know, most games, like, they were pretty difficult back then, but Kirby was pretty accessible, and you could just fly over the screen, you know, suck people up. It was super fun. Super fun.
Yeah. What was Kirby called? Because Kirby on the NES was Kirby's Adventure. That's right, isn't it?
Wasn't it Kirby's Dream Land on the
Kirby's Dream Land, yeah.
So after playing Kirby's Dream Land, which I loved on the Game Boy, I then went back and got the NES one. It was the Game Boy that introduced Kirby.
Well, it's so funny because I did the other way around. I played the NES one first, thinking like that was the original. Because it's the NES. You play something on the NES, you go, wow, like, it's so good to get back to the original and play it. When I got to the end of Kirby's Adventure on the NES, the last level was in black and white, so the game's in colour. And the last level was a hark back to Kirby's Dream Land. And I think maybe even the level is named after that. And you're playing it, and I was like, when I played it, I was like, I remember this. And I obviously had a nostalgic memory of those guys playing the original Kirby's Dream Land, which was so good.
All of us have got nostalgic memories about the original Game Boy, and none of us ever actually owned one originally. Like, I think maybe I bought one later, like retro one or something, but I never actually had one.
I was thinking, you mentioned one of your first like console that was bought for you. Now I've got like a very clear memory of this because you got that. It was the Game Boy Pocket Color, and you got it after I had the Game Boy Color. Now this is a very sour point for me. I don't know if you remember it clearly, right? But Steve, you'll remember buying me Pokemon Blue when it came out. Now, like, no one had Pokemon then. Like, no one knew what Pokemon was. This was before, like, it became Pokemon. This was before the cartoons. This was like Pokemon Blue, and you got it maybe as an import or something. And you gave it to me, and you're like, hey, you're gonna really like this. And I was just like, what is? I think it was for Christmas as well. And I was really disappointed because you're Steve. You know, you live in London. You had the cool games and stuff, and you knew all the like everything about the games. And then I started playing, and then like my life changed, and I was completely addicted to Pokemon, as like were loads of people and still are. But the games, the merchandise, the everything, like watching it on TV. And then came the next Christmas.
You've mastered Blue. And now you're ready for the next step.
By this point, I'm the biggest Pokemon fan ever. And then what happens, like, it's like Christmas time, and I'm looking forward to like getting some more Pokemon stuff, and you rip open your present. I got like, I don't know, a hairdryer or something, like, and you rip open your present, and there's like a limited edition. Well, you say what it was, what you got.
You got me a Game Boy Pocket and Pokemon Yellow, and it was a yellow Game Boy Pocket together, right, for Christmas? Or am I? Yeah,
that's right.
And I don't remember it being the year after yours, Jamie, but I do remember me being very much into Pokemon as well at that time. And I'm guessing, Steve, you probably picked up on that and was like, well, I got Jamie a Game Boy last year, so I'm going to get you, like, you know, Adam a Game Boy this year or something like that.
Well, kind of how it went was, you remembered really well, because I bought that Pokemon Blue on import. I think it was a US import, but it still worked on the machines. And I gave it to you, and you did seem a little bit nonplussed. And I thought, this is like, this is a bummer, because this is going to be the next big thing. And I was telling you, and you're like, yeah, okay, fine. And so then the next year rolls around. I thought, okay, Pokemon Yellow, get this game, this cute like pocket. Wasn't a color, but it was a yellow pocket, right? That was the only way I was able to afford, like, to get, you know, the console and the game at the same time.
Yeah, it wasn't color. I think Pokemon Yellow, wasn't there an aspect to it that had some color in it or something like that?
Well, the cartridge.
Other than the cartridge, was there not, like, was it just the fact that you could walk around with Pikachu? That was like the only difference with Pokemon Yellow.
This is what I'm talking about, man. Like, you don't even know the difference. Like, when you got Pokemon Yellow, like, I had heard about
you could
Pokemon.
Walk around with Pikachu, and there was
No.
very
I was so
slight
passionate about this at the time, right? And I remember you opening it. Yes, you walk around with Pikachu, but the difference is, so the game came out, Pokemon Blue came out, and that preceded the anime. And so if you then start watching the anime after you play Pokemon Blue, you're like, well, it's not quite the same, because in Pokemon Blue you start with like Squirtle, Charmander, or Bulbasaur. But Pokemon Yellow came out, and it's like it follows the actual story of Ash, and you're like, wow, Pikachu follows you behind you. You get all of the Pokemon, like all of them.
And you say you get the Pokemon.
They redesigned some of the Pokemon.
You don't just start with Pokemon. You only start with Pikachu.
Yes, you do, but also you get like you get given like Squirtle, Bulbasaur, and Charmander.
Pokemon Yellow was the first Pokemon game I ever played, so I couldn't really compare it to the first two, because it was Pokemon Red and Blue, right? Were they not released at the same time? That's what I thought.
They were released at the same time, yeah.
For me, it was like, okay, there was Red and Blue, which looked awesome. I had friends who played them. But then when Yellow came out, all I knew about Yellow was that, for me, was that it was cool because it was brand new. Not many people had it. And I had it on a Game Boy that was yellow, and it was a pocket Game Boy. So for me, it was like the coolest thing ever. It didn't matter if the game was crap. I was always going to enjoy it. And it just so happened the game was amazing. I actually remember one memory of that game was when, you know, that Pokemon Missing Go.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, of course, Missing Go, yeah.
I don't know if it was like purposefully put in the game, but it's basically a Pokemon that you can catch that's just a game glitch. And to do it, you have to like walk up and down the beach.
SSN.
Or and eventually once you've done it like 20 times and you've caught like all the Pokemon in the area, he just pops up, and it's just this game glitch, and it says missing no. So I think it's missing number or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But all I remember is I did it, and all my inventory shot up to like the maxed out like thing. There was a kid in class at the time, but he was like, "How did you do that?" And then he went on his one and did it, like walked up and down. It took him like the whole day, and eventually he caught Missing No, and his game corrupted.
Yeah, it corrupts the game. I knew that. Yeah, that's really bad. I remember Missing No. I remember you showing me. Like, that's so cool.
So a lot of games I missed on the original Game Boy. I played on the Pocket, played on the Color, which I think you had, Jamie. And
I had that, yeah.
Yeah, and so there was so many that I managed to play later, probably like 5-6 years after they were, released and stuff.
But Game Boy Color was a real upgrade. Like, because you play all the normal Game Boy games on it, and it fits in the back just fine. You wouldn't even know that it's color, because most of the black and white games, apart from the games that were released in Game Boy Color, and they had a little bulge on the front instead of an indent, and they were like see-through, some of them, and they were really cool design. But suddenly they're color, and I remember playing for hours and hours and hours and hours on that. But mostly, like you said, original Game Boy games, because you could pick them up so cheap and play them.
I mean, the problem with the Game Boy Color was I felt a bit gypped when that came out, because I wanted one for a short period of time, because I thought basically it's a Game Boy version of the Game Gear, backlit screen, all the things I wanted.
It didn't have a backlit screen. It didn't have a backlit
Game Boy, yeah. And so when you got it, and it was the Game Boy Color, and then you turned it on, and it was like not backlit. I just thought, like, what sort of joke is this? Yeah, they're colored, but you can't see them, And so, but when the SP came out, which is obviously what you just mentioned, that was when it's like, okay, now it's finally caught up to what I wanted.
And the thing is, with handhelds, I think that most lists, like most mainstream lists, are going to be completely dominated by Nintendo. I mean, it will still be interesting to talk about the other ones, because there's some like real interesting handhelds that I've owned and played over the years. But they've been so dominant in the handheld area that most people's memories are going to be like, yeah, like you said, Game Boy, maybe Game Boy Advance, DS.
even I still like hear older people say, "Oh, is that a Game Boy you've got there?" Even though they don't exist anymore, because
Yeah, it's like
you
the
think
PlayStation handheld.
yeah, exactly. You don't say is that a PSP, you know?
I mean, my favourite handheld is actually the Game Gear.
Yeah.
And obviously, I have really good memories of having the Game Boy Pocket, and I had a GBA as well. Played maybe about 6-7 games on that. Loved it, but again, my most fond memories of a handheld console is the Game Gear. You know, and that's not Nintendo.
Well, let's talk about some of them then. Let's like.
I mean, the thing about the Game Gear is, like, I didn't really know what sort of graphically what it like. I just thought it was way better than the Game Boy because it was color, it was backlit. Yeah,
that was a big deal. That was a big deal that it was backlit.
If I could take a Game Boy camping with me and play it properly in the night, like that would have been the dream, you know. And so that's what it was for me. Yes, it had to take about 1 million batteries.
They like maybe 3 hours and they're all gone. Like that was expensive. That was expensive.
Yeah. And but you could hook up the Game Gear using the Mega Drive adapter.
Yes, the AC adapter.
So
yeah,
even when you, like, if you were just indoors and you weren't camping, say, like, you could just hook it up and not waste those like precious battery time, you know, and then save the batteries for when you were going out. And but to be honest, most of the time I like playing the Game Gear was indoors. Like I would play it, you know, sometimes more than the Mega Drive. And I suppose one of the reasons I loved it so much was because the games were different to the Mega Drive, you know, and it introduced me to a lot of games on the Master System, because I never had a Master System, but a lot of the games on the Game Gear were like either ports or kind of adapted versions of the Master System games. So like my favorite Sonic games are Sonic 1 and Sonic 2 on the Game Gear. And there was this Tails game on the Game Gear as well. It's like a platform just for Tails. It might be like Tails' Adventure or something like that.
Yeah, he got his own adventure on the Game Gear.
There was Ren and Stimpy as well.
Oh my god, Ren and Stimpy was brilliant. But also, you're right, the graphics were good. Like
those games hold up.
That was at the same time as the Game Boy, but that was quite advanced. Like Sega's always been ahead of the curve, I think. Like, but almost too far ahead. You know, it's the same with the Dreamcast and the Saturn. They've got this revolutionary thinking. Ren and Stimpy looked great. I remember playing The Lion King on that.
It was such a fun game. That Stampede level where you just constantly.
Oh man! How far did we get? Some of them I don't ever remember completing. Like,
no, I
I
think
remember as far as the Elephant's Graveyard in the line.
Elephant's Graveyard and the Stampede, which are probably only 3 levels in. But then most of the retro games I played on, certainly on the Game Gear, I never completed. You know, like. When did
you get into the Game Gear games? Was it when they were like RRP brand new? Because I remember that like one of the big barriers when you're young is the price of stuff, right? And so even the price difference between like a Game Boy being 70 or 90 pounds in the shop, you know, and a Game Gear, I don't remember what it was like, but if it was 140, it would factor into your purchasing decision. And the games did look better, and the Game Boy looked like, well, you know, the screen was 4 kind of green colours, and it did some good things with it, but it was like much more basic looking, right? But it still did really well, and I think one of the reasons is that price and the availability of all the Game Boy games. You could just pick them up everywhere. You know, you could always pick up a cheap game somewhere.
There were some games at market stalls and stuff that we went to, which were like a bit more expensive, maybe like £10 or something like that. You know, they probably weren't brand new, but they were newer than other games that were like £3. And so,
but it wouldn't have been RRP. That's the thing, Steve, because you're right. Like
it was after.
It was after that.
There was obviously the Castle of Illusion games, which were again ports from the Master System, Land of Illusion, I think, or something like that, where Mickey looks a little bit different in it. He's got like black eyes, and he's a bit more like a drawn character, you know, as opposed to like pixels.
I remember you picking that up on one episode, I think.
Streets of Rage as well.
Oh yeah.
Playing Streets of Rage on a handheld while you're camping, like it was just the best thing ever.
There's something that tops that. And that is, and bear in mind, this is back in the day. There was no technology like this. Us sitting in a tent, watching the TV, on our handheld console, and there was like a big antenna, and we'd try and get signal, and then we'd sit and watch channel 2 or something. Like, I think there's 4 channels.
I don't even really remember what I watched on it. It was probably just a really horrible, like flickering image with like terrible signal. But I just remember being so excited every time I plugged it in because it was like having a portable TV with me, you know, all the time.
No one had portable TVs. They were some like luxury gadget at the time. So if you could, I'm just watching a TV on the balcony or something. So the thing that sticks with me about Game Gear, like Game Gear memories, is that like at the time, you know, we didn't have access to videos or anything like what the games looked like, and so we had magazines. And the magazines, the screenshots they had of the Game Gear, they always looked crisp and they always looked excellent. And the Game Boy ones always looked rubbish, you know. And so you could really, I mean, you know, I love the Game Boy, like, but when you put it in a print magazine, and I specifically remember that one of those Mickey Mouse games, and remember looking, it's like, it looks just like a cartoon. It looks so crisp. And so it looked great, but I didn't know many people who had one, and I didn't know many people who had an Atari Lynx. I knew one kid, and that was massive. And the batteries, rechargeable batteries, were terrible back then. Like now, everyone's got like 20 decent batteries lying around the house, right? But like, but back then they were terrible. They didn't last very long. The Game Gear 8 batteries, so you just, like you said, you basically sat at home and played it. And if you sat at home and played it, you invite someone around. It was probably too expensive for people to bring out the house. Whereas, I don't know, I remember people having Game Boys everywhere, even in their little carry cases, and with those ridiculous screens on the front to try and see what they were doing.
Yeah.
Well, the magnifying screens, that is so cool. That's so funny.
The consoles had to be popular for them to be cool. So you could have a Game Gear with a color screen, you know, backlit and all the things that you dream of. But if no one's got one and it's just you, it's like it's not as
lonely. You can't swap games either. You can't swap games.
Like, I was always the kid who was constantly lending my thing to my friends so that they could experience it and I could talk to them about it afterwards. Every retro store that we go into, they sell the cheapest ones, the cheapest games we find there are usually Game Gear games.
It's because they break. Like,
it's because no one can play them anymore. You have to buy a Game Gear and find 20 million batteries and hope that it works, which most of the time they don't.
Yeah, they are notorious for, like, you know, getting busted, but apparently quite easy to fix. I don't know, you know, that you can definitely play it on an emulator, but there's something about playing on that kind of slightly blurry, quite bright. Didn't have a dial for the brightness. Can you brighten? No, it was just
no,
really
it's
bright.
so bright. Oh, hang on.
I feel like there was, but I don't think it made much difference. I think it was like one of those ones that you like turn it up and it just does.
I remember playing GG Shinobi, you know, the Game Gear Shinobi, right?
Yeah.
And I remember when you kind of walk, it's quite fast, right? And it would be pretty smeary. Like, I mean, the Game Boy was as well, so you were used to it. But there's something about playing with that smear, with that like authentic, you know, original screen feel than playing on an emulator. Yeah.
There was actually one game on the Game Gear, and we'll move on from this, but that I never managed to get and put as part of the collection, but it was Mega Man. And I think that Mega Man on the game, it was like a sort of amalgamation of like Mega Man 3 and 4. It was a bit weird. It was like a personalized one for the Game Gear, you know, and it wasn't a port. It wasn't a direct port from the NES. It had all the great colors. And it wasn't from the Mega Drive, which is obviously, you know, you've got like Mega Man 1 to 6 on the was it 1 to 3 on the Mega Drive? I can't remember.
Remember. Mega
Do you know what's
quite
crazy?
rare, isn't it?
Mega Drive one is rare, yeah, and the Game Gear one was even rarer, I think.
Well, Mega Man X and stuff was on the SNES.
Yeah, not Mega Man X. I just mean
Mega Man on the Game Gear. Like, I'm just having a look here. Was it featured bosses from 4 and 5?
Yeah,
so that would have been new bosses for most people, because, you know, I remember Mega Man 1, 2, and 3 being around on the NES, and then I remember hearing later that there was like 4, 5, and 6, and I remember we found one in a shop once. Do you remember we found Mega Man 4?
Yeah.
And thinking like, oh, this is quite rare to find like a UK release of it.
Yeah, well, Mega Man 4 was amazing because it was just the perfect balance between being really difficult but playable. Whereas number 3, which again, maybe since then it's different for you, but number 3 is probably the hardest game I've ever played in my life.
It's so hard. I went back, like, this isn't like when I was younger I couldn't complete it. I went back and really avidly tried to beat that game, and it's so difficult. Like, it's so difficult. That's I blew my mind that there was even Mega Man on the Game Gear. I didn't know until you said that. I didn't know that. That's crazy.
To be honest, I don't think I really knew that either. But now I'm imagining it, like playing Mega Man on the Game Gear is going to be like a completely different experience, because, you know, it came out on the Game Boy. There was Mega Man 1 and 2, at least, right? Maybe a couple more, and but they were different. Look a bit crap, like, really, compared. But the Game Gear one is going to look like a console version, but in your hand. I think the first handheld console I got was would have been the Game Boy Advance.
Of the Zeldas, if you go back and play it now, it's such a brilliant game.
It was just, I just got so absorbed in that world. It was so atmospheric.
It was perfect. My old NES original experience, in my hand.
They were so badly designed, the games particularly.